Chosen one. Stop everything. This isn't random. This isn't noise. This is the divine call your soul has been quietly longing for. Right now, yes. This very moment, heaven has pressed pause around you. Not to punish, not to delay you again, but to finally reveal what the delay was truly about. You thought you missed it. You thought you fell behind. You believed others ran ahead while you were left watching life happen from the sidelines. But what if I told you heaven never ran ahead of you? Heaven stood still until you were ready. You see, the reason the door didn't open wasn't because you lacked faith. It wasn't because you weren't good enough. It was because you were chosen for something that required a deeper preparation. You were not being overlooked. You were being hidden, protected, guarded. Heaven held you back because the appointed time had not yet arrived. And now, here it comes. There are no coincidences here. The battles you faced, the lonely nights you endured, the closed doors, the betrayals, they weren't random trials. They were part of the refinement of a chosen one. You, when others sprinted ahead in ambition, you waited. When doors opened easily for them, you were told, not yet. When everyone else clapped in celebration, you sat in silence, asking God, did you forget me? But no, God was never late. He was calibrating you to his time. It is written in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 4, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. That delay you resented, it was grace in disguise. Because had he let you move in your own timing, it would have destroyed you. You would have walked into rooms you weren't ready to carry, into assignments you couldn't yet discern, into blessings that would have broken you instead of building you. And now you've passed the test. You passed because you didn't move. You passed because you listened when others mocked. You passed because you waited when your flesh screamed, go. You passed because you trusted when you had no evidence to hold on to. That's why hell fought you so hard during your delay, because heaven had marked you. Every setback was a setup. Every delay was a test. Every moment of waiting was a moment of molding. The voice of God was shaping your spirit. The silence, that was the sharpening. The stillness, that was the setup. While others were launching fast, you were being anchored deep. And now the ground beneath you is unshakable. Chosen one. The delay is not a sign that you are behind. It's the signal that you are aligned. You were being planted, not buried. You were being equipped, not forgotten. You were being trusted with time. Because what you're about to step into carries a weight that casual faith cannot carry. You had to be delayed so that when the moment came, you would not squander it. Understand this: when God delays a chosen one, it's not a denial, it's a divine declaration. You are meant for more. The kind of more that's not for everyone. You are not called to blend in. You are called to disrupt, to challenge, to carry the weight of something eternal. So of course your journey didn't look like theirs. Of course the timeline was different. It had to be. You were handpicked for something holy, and heaven was not about to rush that. Now the same people who pitied you for your delay will watch God accelerate you with a force they can't explain. But it won't be speed birthed in ego. It will be speed born of obedience. The truth is, you've been walking through a curriculum of silence, a holy university of waiting, discipline, and unseen warfare. But those nights you cried, those mornings You rose in faith, even when nothing changed. Those were heaven's markers that you were maturing. Heaven doesn't graduate the unstable. You had to be proven faithful in isolation before you could carry the oil in public. And you did. Comment the number 777 right now if your spirit knows this delay had heaven's fingerprints all over it. You didn't lose time, you were gaining strength. You weren't held back. You were held in place by grace. Chosen one. Don't hide your story. Share this word. Someone else is still in the hallway. You just exited. Subscribe now if you feel this confirmed something in your spirit. Like and share this so the algorithm becomes the altar. You've stepped into your moment. And this is just the beginning. You weren't denied. You were preserved. That's what the delay was. That's what the silence meant. It wasn't rejection. It wasn't abandonment. It was the fierce mercy of a God who saw the battle up ahead and said, "Not yet. I love you too much to let you walk into that unshielded." Amen. You cried over doors that never opened, people who walked away, and moments that slipped through your hands. You grieved over what looked like missed opportunity, not realizing it was heaven's intervention, blocking you from destruction you couldn't yet perceive, because what you thought was rejection was really redirection. God said, no, not to punish, but to protect. He said no, because the space wasn't safe. He said no, because the connection wasn't clean. He said no, because had you entered then, the weight of what you would have inherited would have crushed your spirit. And what you didn't know at the time, what you couldn't have seen, is that every closed door was a fortress wall between you and the enemy's plan. He saw what you couldn't. He heard conversations behind your back. He discerned motives that were dressed in loyalty but leaking poison. He removed people. You would have clung to people who would have compromised the oil he placed inside you. Sometimes, the greatest gift from heaven is unanswered prayer. Because had God answered some of the cries you offered in desperation, you'd be bound to things today that no longer serve your calling. You'd be tied to promises that were never yours. You'd be sitting at tables He never called you to, and chosen one. Those delays, the moments you called disappointment, were divine protection disguised as heartbreak. That's why you need to understand something deeper about divine timing. It's not just about when, it's about why, not yet. There are some things your heart desired, but your maturity hadn't caught up with your destiny. The calling was ready, but the character still needed time. And so the Father, in wisdom, delayed the fulfillment, not because he changed his mind about you, but because he refused to release a masterpiece half finished. He was shielding you from premature exposure, because the spotlight can kill what the secret place has not yet strengthened. Influence before identity is disaster. Assignment before healing is sabotage. You would have bled over what you were supposed to build. So he covered you. He hid you. He let them forget your name. He let your gifts go unnoticed. He allowed seasons of invisibility. He let your name be left out of conversations where you should have been mentioned. Not because you were being punished, but because you were being preserved. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 32, verse 7, "You are my hiding place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance." Heaven's strategy doesn't always make sense until you look back and realize that no saved me. That delay preserved your purity. That silence preserved your sanity. That waiting preserved your authority. That rejection preserved your oil. Because what is placed inside of you is not ordinary. It's holy. And what is holy must be guarded. So heaven surrounded you not with applause, but with protection. While others were stepping forward, God was setting you apart. Not sidelining, not discarding, setting apart. There's a difference. To be set aside is to be dismissed. To be set apart is to be chosen. And you, chosen one, have been set apart for something greater than comfort, greater than applause, greater than the platform. You were set apart to carry presence, and presence costs. It costs delay. It costs misunderstanding. It costs invisibility. But it also brings power that no demon in hell can counterfeit. That's why you couldn't be rushed. That's why you had to be preserved. Because if you had entered the room too early, you would have compromised your oil just to keep the door open. But God said, I will preserve you even if it costs your comfort, even if it costs your calendar, even if it costs your connections. Because when I release you, nothing will stop you. Now, you didn't miss your moment. You were being protected for the moment that is still coming. It's still written, still scheduled, still sealed. And now you carry wisdom that can't be taught in a sermon. You carry discernment that only silence can birth. You carry endurance that only wilderness can cultivate. You weren't denied. You were preserved. You passed the wilderness test. Not everyone does. There are those who enter the dry season and never make it out. They let bitterness take root. They let silence break their faith. They let delay turn into disobedience. But not you. You didn't curse God in the drought. You kept walking. You didn't lose your song when everything around you went silent. You kept singing. You didn't trade obedience for comfort. You didn't compromise your oil just to feel seen. You stayed hidden when it would have been easier to force the door open. That's how heaven knew you were ready. The wilderness is the sacred training ground of the chosen. It's not punishment, it's placement. God places his most trusted ones there, away from the crowds, away from the noise, away from distractions. Why? Because you can't carry glory and ego at the same time. Something has to die in the wilderness. You passed the test because what died in you wasn't your worship. It was your pride. It was your need to be validated by others. It was your addiction to human timelines. That false sense of urgency slayed. That craving to compare buried. That need to prove yourself left behind in the sand. That's what the wilderness is for. To strip away the layers that don't belong on a chosen one. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Olu. These are the words we find in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13. This isn't a motivational quote, it's a divine conclusion. You can endure isolation. You can walk without clarity. You can survive the spiritual drought. Why? Because your source was never the wilderness. Your source has always been the one who led you there. Chosen one. The wilderness didn't weaken you, it revealed what you were made of. You passed the test not by getting everything right, but by refusing to walk away. And let me tell you this, the enemy hated every step you took in that season, because every time you rose again, every time you prayed when you didn't feel like it, every time you praised with no proof, you were announcing to darkness, I'm not for sale. I'm not giving up. I'm still chosen. You want to know what faith looks like? It looks like you getting up with tear-stained eyes. It looks like you walking through another closed door without quitting. It looks like you worshipping when the heavens seemed like brass. Because real faith is not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't post selfies in the storm. Real faith endures. And you endured. You came through the season, scarred but not silenced. Bent but not broken. Not because you were strong, but because you knew where to lean. God never promised the wilderness would be short, but He promised you'd come out. And here you are. You're not who you were when you entered. Your prayers sound different now. Your discernment is deeper now. Your movements are more precise. You don't just carry words anymore, you carry weight. The wilderness turned you from a wanderer into a weapon. You don't even realize it. But what you carry now disturbs the enemy. The very atmosphere shifts when you walk into a space. Why? Because you carry proof that the fire didn't consume you. You carry evidence that the silence didn't shut you down. This is what it means to be a remnant. Not just surviving the dry season, but being shaped by it. The ones who come out of the wilderness still lifting their hands, they carry an authority that can't be mimicked. And that's you. Type this in the comments right now. I survived it. Lon, say it aloud. Write it out. Why? Because hell needs to hear it. And more importantly, you need to hear it. Not just as a whisper of relief, but as a declaration of triumph. You didn't just get through, you grew through. I survived it isn't just a statement. It's your anthem, your reminder. The enemy thought the wilderness would take you out, but it only took out what didn't belong. What remains is stronger, purer, and unstoppable. You passed the test, and now you're trusted with more. Because wilderness graduates don't walk back into normal life, they walk into divine assignment. You've earned your scars, and they speak louder than sermons. You've walked through fire and come out fragrant with the oil of endurance. Don't despise the season that built you. Without the wilderness, you wouldn't have known what's inside of you. You wouldn't have discovered the depth of your dependence. You wouldn't have found the voice of God in the stillness. And now you'll carry that into every room you step into. People won't understand how you're still standing. That's okay. Let them see the fruit. Let them witness the glory. You don't owe explanations. Your endurance is your evidence. You survived it, and that means you're ready for what's next. Heaven watched in silence. That's the part no one prepares you for the divine quiet. When the heavens seem sealed shut, and every prayer echoes back, empty. When you fast, and nothing moves. When you cry out, and the only sound is your own voice returning to you. It feels like abandonment, like divine distance. But it's not. The silence wasn't God's absence. It was His strategy. You assumed silence meant you were doing something wrong. But heaven wasn't ignoring you. Heaven was observing you, watching what you would do when the encouragement faded, when the applause stopped, when nothing made sense. Because silence is the furnace where real faith is forged. Faith that isn't performed, but proven. Faith that doesn't need a spotlight, only surrender. Faith that keeps going when there's nothing to see, nothing to feel, nothing to hold. That kind of faith isn't born in miracles, it's born in mystery. The moments when you asked, God, where are you? And He didn't answer. Those were the moments He was measuring your trust. Silence is a divine scalpel. It cuts away the noise, and it reveals what's inside. When heaven is silent, your heart speaks louder. Your true motives come forward. Your spiritual muscles are tested, and only those who are called, not just excited, survive that place. You didn't fold. You didn't run. You didn't curse the silence. You stayed. And that tells heaven more than your loudest shout of praise ever could. Because anyone can praise when the presence is obvious. But it takes a remnant, a true warrior, a marked one, to stay faithful in the void, to believe when nothing is visible, to worship when nothing is working. You weren't being ignored. You were being proven. You see, the classroom of silence is sacred. God doesn't speak to fill the void. He speaks to fulfill a purpose. And in this season, He was speaking less because He was doing more, building in you, clearing around you, setting things in place for what's coming next. But He needed to know, can you handle instruction without affirmation? Can you follow orders without always hearing feedback? Can you walk the blueprint even when the voice goes quiet? That's the kind of maturity He was developing in you. A trust that's not addicted to confirmation, because if you need a sign for every step, you'll never last in a war zone. And, chosen one, you weren't made for playgrounds, you were made for battlegrounds. God was training you not to rely on emotional highs or goosebumps. He was shaping you to be grounded, rooted, unwavering. He was teaching you to remember what He said before the silence came. That's how warriors are built, not by fresh words every day, but by obeying the last word until He speaks again. Truly, you are a God who hides Himself. O God of Israel, the Savior. And these words are found in the book of Isaiah, chapter 45, verse 15. Heaven doesn't promote based on excitement. It promotes based on endurance. And you endured. The silence didn't kill your obedience, it purified it. There's a quiet strength inside of you now, a depth you didn't have before. You don't just quote verses, you've lived them. You don't just talk faith, you've walked it in places where hope had no reason to exist. That's what silence did. And what no one else could see, heaven recorded. Every tear you cried behind closed doors, every time you pushed through the numbness, every time you whispered, I still trust you, with trembling lips. Those weren't lost. They were memorialized, etched in eternity, as proof that you're not casual, you're called. The silence wasn't a punishment. It was a promotion process. Because when God gets ready to trust someone with real authority, He leads them through silence first. Why? Because the one who survives silence doesn't serve for claps, doesn't move for likes, doesn't depend on noise. They carry conviction. They live by fire, not feedback. You do now. You're no longer moved by the crowd, you're moved by the call. You don't need volume to know He's near. You know how to sense Him in the stillness. That's what the silence taught you. Not how to get God to talk, but how to trust that He's still working even when He doesn't. And trust like that? It can't be shaken. It makes you unmovable. So don't despise the silent season. Don't wish it away. Don't call it wasted. Because you came out of it with eyes that see deeper, ears that hear clearer, and a heart that no longer depends on circumstance to remain loyal. You came out trusted and marked and ready. Heaven was never absent, just Kia. And now that same heaven is about to speak again, loudly. You didn't bow to pressure. Others did. You watched them compromise. You watched them sell out for applause, for position, for temporary comfort. You saw them shift their values when the waiting felt too long. You saw them walk away from conviction in exchange for convenience. But not you. You stood when it would have been easier to fold. You held the line when it would have been easier to blur it. You remained loyal to the voice of God when other voices got louder. Even when the pressure was crushing, you didn't crack. That's not weakness. That's not stubbornness. That's the mark of a chosen one who has been through the fire and came out refined, not reduced. Pressure reveals who's real. And in that season, you were tested not by applause, but by silence, not by reward, but by resistance. It would have been easy to lower your standards, to do what worked for others, to follow the crowd, to chase visibility. But something in you said no, not because you didn't want breakthrough, but because you wanted it the right way. God saw that. While others were chasing platforms, you were guarding your posture. While others ran after followers, you remained faithful in the secret place. And while some around you built their names, you chose to build His name. That's why He trusts you. Because anyone can serve when it benefits them, but to serve when it costs you everything, that's where heaven leans in. That's where destiny begins to activate. You didn't bow to pressure because you knew something deeper. Pressure is temporary, but purity is eternal. God was watching not to shame you, but to honor you. Every time you turned down a shortcut, every time you resisted temptation, every time you stayed silent instead of clapping back, heaven took note. Because that's not natural behavior, that's chosen behavior. And let's be honest, you were tempted. Tempted to promote yourself, tempted to give up, tempted to choose easier roads, louder paths, faster results. But you didn't. And that made all the difference. What others built quickly is now crumbling quietly. What you built slowly is about to stand strong. Because integrity doesn't shout, but it always lasts. You've been battle-tested, faith refined, and now, when pressure comes again, and it will, you'll be unshaken, because your decisions weren't rooted in fear or pride, but in obedience. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow Him. Then, these are the words spoken by the prophet Elijah, recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. You made your choice. You chose obedience over urgency, surrender over strategy, holiness over hustle. And you've gained more than you know. You've gained spiritual authority. You've gained heaven's trust. You've gained discernment, clarity, weight. You've gained the kind of power that can't be manipulated, faked, or imitated. And now you carry something the world can't take from you: authenticity. You're real. Real with God. Real with yourself. Real with your walk. And that kind of realness disrupts atmospheres. It confuses darkness. It shakes systems. That's why pressure kept coming at you. But the enemy's pressure only revealed the purity of what God placed inside you. Now, this is the moment to breathe, to look back and say, I didn't bow. And if this word resonates with your journey, if you know God has been confirming this in your quiet places, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else is in the exact same battle you just came out of. Let your endurance speak life into theirs. Like this video, if it mirrored what you've lived through, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that standing firm is still possible. And if this ministry continues to feed your soul, subscribe, not just to follow, but to stay connected to the current of what heaven is pouring out here. You are not alone in this. There's a remnant rising, and you're part of it. God is building a generation of believers who don't chase trends, who don't fold under pressure, who don't blend in to survive. He's raising up ones who stand apart, set apart like you. You may not have bowed, but now it's time to rise, to walk boldly into what's next, not with arrogance, but with quiet authority, knowing that you were tested and proven, knowing that the weight you carry is real, and the call you answered is sacred. Because this world doesn't need more loud voices, it needs holy ones. It needs voices that can't be bought, hearts that can't be swayed, and spirits that can't be compromised. And you are one of them, chosen one. Pressure tried to shape you, but you were already formed by fire. And now, like gold purified in the flame, you emerge more radiant than before. Heaven saw, hell knows, and now it's your time to move. The delay unlocked discernment. It didn't just slow you down, it opened your eyes. Because when God puts your journey on pause, He's not punishing you, He's sharpening your perception. Maturity isn't always birthed through movement. Sometimes it's born in stillness, in the waiting. Your spiritual senses woke up. You began to see through what once seduced you. You started to hear beyond the noise of the crowd. The delay that once frustrated you is now the reason you're no longer fooled by superficial things. You don't fall for flattery. You don't chase lights. You don't follow voices that are loud but lack oil. You used to move off emotion. Now you move off instruction. That's discernment. When the door didn't open, you were forced to ask, why? You began to pray differently, not just for opportunity, but for clarity. You started asking God to show you what you couldn't see. And He did, but not all at once. He showed you slowly. He let you sit in rooms where motives were revealed. He let you stay connected to people long enough to see what was hidden under their performance. He let you revisit past decisions and see the roots, not just the results. And all of it became a curriculum. Discernment isn't gifted, it's built. And the delay built it in you. You couldn't afford to be anointed and unaware. You couldn't afford to walk blindly into warfare. So God delayed you, until your ears knew the sound of His whisper, until your eyes could detect the difference between good and God, until your spirit learned to discern what your flesh used to justify. It is written in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 27, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." You hear Him now, not because He started speaking, but because the delay trained you to listen. And that changes everything. Because discernment will protect you in ways strength cannot. You can fight demons all day, but if you can't recognize deception, you'll lose the war before you even draw your sword. Discernment will protect your time. Discernment will protect your relationships. Discernment will protect your peace. And now that it's been unlocked in you, you're not just stepping into new places, you're stepping in equipped. You won't walk through every open door anymore. You'll ask, who opened it? You won't be impressed by titles. You'll look for fruit. You'll pause before saying yes. Because you know that delay is not denial, it might just be divine caution. That's the beauty of what this long road has done in you. It gave you filters heaven can trust. And because you see clearer now, you're going to move cleaner now. Fewer entanglements, fewer distractions, fewer delays going forward, because now you recognize them before they take root. You didn't just survive delay, you studied in it. You learned how to separate the divine from the disguised. There's a reason your circle got smaller. There's a reason your prayers got quieter. There's a reason you started sensing things before they happened. That's not paranoia. That's prophetic positioning. Because when God marks a chosen one, He doesn't just anoint their hands, He upgrades their sight. Now, your eyes carry the fire of someone who's seen too much to be deceived. Your walk carries the peace of someone who knows when to move and when to wait. You've become a gatekeeper for your own soul. No longer just reacting, now discerning. And that's dangerous to darkness. So, what do you do with this gift? You protect it. You don't ignore it. You don't silence it to make others comfortable. Because your discernment isn't just for you, it's for the places God is sending you. You are walking into rooms others can't read. You are being sent to atmospheres that need you to see what they can't. And when you speak, heaven will back it. Because you've proven in the delay that you won't use discernment as gossip, but as guidance. So now you walk as a warrior and a watchman. You don't just fight, you perceive. You don't just move, you assess. You don't just go, you inquire. And that will protect everything connected to your next season. If your spirit knows this word was for you, if you felt your sight sharpened through this long road, then type this number in the comments, 444. Not just to agree, but as a prophetic act, a signal that you're stepping forward with eyes wide open, spirit attuned, and heart in sync with the voice of the shepherd. You see now, and nothing can make you unsee what heaven has shown you. They left, but it was God's hand. That departure you mourned, that absence you wrestled with, it wasn't betrayal. It was divine subtraction. You thought they walked away on their own, but heaven was behind it, guiding it, orchestrating it. Because what you didn't see then, but can see now, is that their presence was holding back your promise. Not because they were evil. Not always. Sometimes they were simply not assigned to the next chapter. Sometimes God removes people not out of punishment, but out of protection. He knows the weight of what's coming next. And He knows who can't carry it with you. So He let them go. And even when you tried to hold on, tried to fix it, tried to make it work, God allowed the distance to grow, the conversation to fade, the misunderstanding to stay unresolved. Not because He wanted you to hurt, but because He needed you free. You were entering a space too sacred to carry unnecessary attachments. Because when you're called, your circle must match your calling. Your alignment matters more than your nostalgia. God saw the conversations behind your back that you didn't hear. He saw the bitterness forming in places you still trusted. And rather than expose them in scandal, He simply led them away. And at first, you questioned it. You asked, was it me? Did I do something wrong? But heaven wasn't punishing you. Heaven was preserving you. The connection had expired. The assignment was complete, and your soul was outgrowing the space they once filled. It is written in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 2, He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. Thought. The truth is, if they were meant to stay, they couldn't have left. Because God doesn't let destiny connections get severed by confusion. He doesn't allow covenant relationships to be destroyed by silence. But when something is seasonal, He lets it fade so you can focus on what's eternal. And you, chosen one, were stepping into something they could no longer walk in. They loved the old version of you, the broken version, the predictable version, the one who needed their validation, but you started changing, evolving, awakening, and your growth started convicting what they weren't willing to confront in themselves. You weren't better, you were just obedient. But obedience creates distance when others aren't moving with the same rhythm. So, don't apologize for who you're becoming. Don't shrink to maintain what heaven already released. Don't rehearse conversations in your head that God already erased. He's calling you into freedom, into clarity, into relationships that are mutual, holy, and purpose-aligned. It's not rejection. It's redirection. It's not the enemy. It's engineering. It's not offense. It's obedience. And there's fruit on the other side of this pruning. Fruit you never would have seen if you stayed connected out of comfort. Fruit that's waiting to grow where codependency used to live. Fruit that will multiply now that the draining attachments are gone. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it was confusing. Yes, you questioned your own worth for a while. But now that time has passed, be honest, aren't you lighter? Isn't your mind clearer? Isn't your walk more focused? That's the evidence that it was God. You no longer have to carry the weight of people you were never called to fix. You're no longer tied to conversations that go nowhere. You're no longer drained by trying to convince someone of your value. You're free. And freedom doesn't always feel good at first, but it's always necessary for growth. What's ahead requires space, emotional space, mental space, spiritual space. And God made room by removing what you were too loyal to let go of. He wasn't taking from you. He was clearing the path. So the next time you remember their absence, don't weep, worship, because if they were supposed to stay, they would have grown with you. But the very fact that they left means their part was complete. Let God write the next scene. Let Him bring the right voices, the right hearts, the ones who don't just tolerate your oil but protect it. People who don't compete with your calling, but honor it. Partners, not projects. Because now, you're moving with clarity. No more emotional clutter. No more forced conversations. No more one-sided loyalty. You're aligned, not just attached. That's what this season is about. And this time, you won't apologize for the people God chose to remove. They left, but it was God's hand that led them out. You're not late, you're aligned. Everything about your journey has felt off schedule, delayed, interrupted, like somehow you missed a turn or moved too slow. You've looked at others around you and wondered, did I fall behind? Did I waste too much time? You've carried the weight of delay like a scar, rehearsing missed moments in your mind, blaming yourself for timelines that didn't unfold the way you expected. But what if heaven never called you late? What if what felt like slowness to you was actually perfect synchronization with the divine? God doesn't use clocks. He uses alignment. And your life has never been random. It's been orchestrated. Down to the silence. Down to the shifts. Down to the seconds that made no sense. You didn't fall behind. You fell into place. Because God isn't rushed. He is strategic. He doesn't waste a minute. Even your detours carried purpose. Even your delays were pregnant with preparation. Even the seasons you thought were a waste became wombs for wisdom. You haven't missed your moment. You've been molded for it. The world told you you were too late. But heaven was saying, not yet. Wait. Align. Because this journey was never about acceleration. It was about preparation. Had you arrived sooner, you wouldn't have seen what you see now. You wouldn't have discerned what you now recognize. You wouldn't have handled what's coming with the kind of character you now carry. God was not just getting you to a place, He was getting you ready to sustain the place. Some doors require strength you don't develop in speed. They require roots you grow through patience. And God, in His mercy, slowed you down, not to frustrate you, but to fortify you. You're not behind schedule. You're ahead in obedience. You move differently now, not chasing opportunity, not living in comparison, but grounded, settled, at peace. That peace isn't complacency, it's confidence. The confidence that comes from knowing you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what heaven has assigned you to do. You used to live in a rush, racing to prove your worth, running to catch up, trying to meet invisible deadlines that were never yours to begin with. But that mindset exhausted you. It drained your oil. It blurred your vision. Then came the delay. And in that pause, God whispered, "Slow down, sync up, walk with me, not ahead of me." And slowly, your rhythm shifted. You no longer define success by speed. You define it by surrender. You no longer panic when doors take time. You trust that what's yours won't pass you by. You no longer feel threatened by the timing of others, because you know God's hand is on your own calendar. It is written in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, though it tarry. Wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay." Oak, this vision you carry, the one God entrusted to your spirit, it's still alive, still appointed, still scheduled. Delay does not cancel appointment. It clarifies it. When you arrive at the right time, with the right heart, in the right position, nothing can stop what God releases. And that's where you are now. Not late. Aligned. You've learned the language of heaven's timing. You've stopped measuring your worth by human milestones. You've let go of the obsession with arrival and embraced the beauty of process. Alignment means everything is clicking into place, not just around you, but inside you. Your heart is steadier. Your vision is clearer. Your motives are purer. You're not trying to force things anymore. You've tasted the peace that comes from resting in God's timeline, and you won't go back to the chaos of rushing again. What others call delay, you now call divine sequence. And that's why this next season will flow differently. It won't be built on striving, it will be built on stillness. Stillness that hears, stillness that sees, stillness that knows, if God called me, He will also carry me. And here's the truth. When you are aligned, you stop auditioning for rooms that don't deserve your presence. You stop begging for what was never yours. You stop fearing the quiet seasons, because you know alignment always precedes acceleration. You're not chasing destiny anymore, you're walking in rhythm with it. Step by step, thought by thought, breath by breath, fully aligned, fully trusted, fully positioned. You haven't missed anything. In fact, you're right on time. You grew in the dark. Not everyone saw it. Most never noticed, because while others were showcasing their success, you were buried in silence, misunderstood, overlooked, invisible. But beneath the surface, something holy was taking place. You weren't just waiting, you were becoming. In a world obsessed with visibility, God hid you, not to punish, but to prepare, not to silence you, but to strengthen you. He didn't bury you to forget you. He planted you to grow you. And growth, real growth, always begins underground. The soil of obscurity can feel suffocating. No spotlight, no affirmation, just quiet battles, silent tears, and the pressure to believe that your unseen labor matters, but chosen one. That was sacred ground. That was your root season. What you built there can't be shaken now, because when God builds you in secret, no storm in public can uproot you. While the world was chasing relevance, you were being refined. You didn't need applause to stay committed. You didn't need validation to stay obedient. You stayed faithful not because people were watching, but because God was. And that's what makes you dangerous to darkness. You grew while grieving. You stretched while silent. You matured without being noticed. You endured without being praised. And through all of it, heaven was watching, not with impatience, but with joy, because he knew that every silent sacrifice was a seed. And now, the roots are deep. You no longer need approval to move. You no longer chase visibility to feel valuable, because now you know what was growing in the dirt was more important than what others were flaunting in the light. And that kind of depth, it's rare, it's holy, it's costly. Most avoid the dark, but you embraced it. You let God die deep. You allowed him to pull out the lies, the pride, the hidden pain. You surrendered not just your actions, but your heart. You gave him access, even when it hurt, even when it meant letting go of who you thought you were supposed to be. That's why your growth has weight now. You don't just know scripture, you carry it. You don't just talk faith, you've lived it. You don't just repeat sermons, you've survived what you now preach. Because this isn't theory for you, it's testimony. We find in the book of Psalms, chapter 1, verse 3, that person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. That's who you've become. A tree, rooted, stable, unshaken. Your branches may not have stretched as fast as others. Your leaves may not have been as flashy, but your roots, they were going deep while no one was watching. And now the fruit is coming, in due season. That's why the dark didn't destroy you, it developed you. You learned how to be anchored, how to stay when everything screamed, run, how to pray when nothing changed, how to believe when nothing confirmed it. That's depth. That's endurance. That's what separates those who are gifted from those who are truly anointed. Because gifting can impress people, but roots, they sustain you when storms come. And storms came. Waves of silence, winds of discouragement, the downpour of delay. But still, you didn't topple. You bent, you wept, you broke in places, but your roots held firm. And now heaven says, well done. Well done for not uprooting when it felt pointless. Well done for staying in the dirt. Well done for trusting the process. Well done for giving me room to work in the hidden places. This next season will reveal what the last season was growing, and not everyone will understand. Some will assume you came out of nowhere. Some will ask how you became so grounded, so clear, so steady. Let them wonder. You don't need to explain what God was doing in the dark. Your fruit will do the talking. You are no longer who you were when the dark season began. You've grown, you've changed, and it shows. So today, mark this moment. Comment these words below. I hear you. No, because your spirit knows. This wasn't just encouragement. This was confirmation. Heaven is reminding you that your hidden obedience has not been wasted, that what felt like delay was deep divine design, and that soon, very soon, what's been underground will break through the surface. And when it does, you'll be ready. Because you didn't just survive the dark, you grew in it. Time was your teacher, not your enemy, not your obstacle, not your punishment. Time has been heaven's scalpel, slow, deliberate, and holy. It didn't just pass, it shaped you. Time taught you what comfort never could, what speed would have skipped, what shortcuts would have ruined, while others rushed. You were being refined. While others demanded quick answers, you sat in the tension of delay. And even though you questioned, even though you wrestled, you didn't walk away. You let time do its work. You didn't know it then. But heaven was using time to remove the noise, to test your motives, to rewire your expectations, to mature your obedience. You used to want results, now you crave wisdom. You used to pray for speed, now you ask for substance. That shift didn't happen overnight. It happened in the trenches, in the long road, in the waiting room of answered prayers. Time is what separated the surface level from the sincere. It exposed what was shallow and revealed what was sacred. And you, chosen one, you stayed in it. You learned. You grew. You let time humble you without hardening you. You let it break your pride, but not your faith. You let it quiet your flesh so your spirit could finally hear clearly. And slowly, the impatience turned into insight. The fear turned into faith. The pressure turned into peace. Because once you stop fighting time, you start walking in rhythm with eternity. You stopped comparing yourself to those who seemed ahead. You stopped calculating how far behind you were. You began to realize that every delay had purpose. Every pause had power. Every season had a seed planted in it. God wasn't just testing your patience, He was teaching you how to carry promise without rushing it. It is written in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1. There is a time for everything, a season for all things, under the heavens. That means you didn't miss anything. What's for you is still for you. Appointed, protected, preserved, and no matter how long it takes, it won't come a second too late. That's not optimism, that's covenant. You have walked through the school of stillness, and now you carry understanding others can't fake. You've developed a pace that confuses people, a calm that isn't lazy, it's locked in. You are no longer driven by deadlines, but drawn by discernment. Because time didn't just change your circumstances, it changed your posture. You've learned to listen more than you speak, to observe more than you react. You've learned how to wait, not just idly, but actively, with expectation, with worship, with discernment. You've learned that not all movement is progress, and not all quiet seasons are punishment. You've stopped trying to manipulate what only God can manifest. And that's why this next chapter will be different. You'll walk into it with authority, not anxiety, with presence, not pressure, with peace, not panits, because you carry something now that can't be rushed, spiritual weight. You move slower, but see deeper. You speak less, but your words carry more. You pray quietly, but shake the atmosphere, because now you don't need to prove. You know, time taught you. It taught you the strength of stillness, the value of being hidden, the power of holding your tongue, the wisdom of moving only when God says move. And that's why what comes next will last. Because it wasn't built in a rush. It was built in the slow fire of surrender. In the daily, yes, that no one saw. In the silent tears that watered your roots. In the prayers you prayed when there were no answers. You have become someone the enemy can no longer bait with timelines. You're not disparity. You're not frantic. You're not willing to trade covenant for convenience anymore. You've waited too long to throw away what heaven is about to release. And now, you are ready for rooms you didn't chase, platforms you didn't manipulate, assignments you didn't audition for. God can trust you because you didn't cut corners to get here. So when it starts to unfold, when doors open, when people call, when things shift, remember, it wasn't sudden. It was sacredly timed. It happened slow, then all at once. And it's your faithfulness in the slow that heaven is honoring in the now. So, if this word confirmed something in you, if it echoed what you've walked through in silence, don't keep it to yourself. Like this message to mark your agreement. Share it with someone who's still learning to trust the pace of God. Subscribe if you haven't already. To stay connected to more words that speak life and purpose over your process. Because you're not here by accident. You've been walking with heaven's clock all along. And now, it's time. The battle was not just yours. You thought it was personal. You thought the attacks were random, isolated, and tied only to your emotions, your past, your habits. But what you were fighting wasn't just about your feelings, it was about your future. The warfare you endured was never just about you. You were contending for something far bigger, for your bloodline, for your calling, for your mantle, for the generations after you. The reason it felt so intense, so targeted, so relentless is because it was. Hell doesn't fight what doesn't threaten it. And you, chosen one, are a threat. The enemy saw what you couldn't. He saw what was planted in you. He saw the authority that would awaken. He saw the chains that would break once you came into alignment. And he panicked. That's why your battle wasn't just emotional, it was spiritual. It wasn't just that you were tired. You were under Ziga. The exhaustion wasn't laziness. It was resistance. The confusion wasn't weakness. It was warfare. The moments when you almost quit, that wasn't just discouragement. That was demonic pressure, trying to silence a voice that was destined to shatter strongholds. And yet you stayed. You didn't understand it all. But something in you kept standing, kept praying, kept showing up. You didn't have the full picture, but your spirit knew, this is bigger than me. You were wrestling not just for today's peace, but for tomorrow's promise, and that's what made you dangerous. Because you didn't fold. You could have. There were moments when it would have been easier to walk away from the assignment, from the obedience, from the fire. But you didn't. You got up with tears in your eyes and praise in your mouth. You walked forward when you had no map, just faith. The enemy tried to wear you down with repetition. Same battle, same triggers, same patterns. But what he didn't account for was your resilience. The kind of resilience that doesn't come from talent or toughness, but from truth. You held on to God's word even when your emotions betrayed you. You chose holiness when compromise whispered louder. You resisted temptation when your flesh begged to give in. And that is what broke the cycle. Because cycles don't break with noise. They break with endurance. What looked like a delay was actually a spiritual fight for territory. Every time you said yes, when it would have been easier to say no, you were reclaiming ground. Ground your family line had forfeited, ground your past tried to sabotage, ground that belonged to your name in heaven's archives. You didn't just survive for yourself, you survived for others. For the child who learned prayer from you, for the friend who will come to Christ through your story, for the generation that will inherit your victory instead of your wounds. The battle came for your mind, because your mind is a gateway. The battle came for your body, because your body is a temple. The battle came for your voice, because your voice is a weapon. The battle came for your focus, because your assignment is precise. And now, look, you're still here, not untouched, but undefeated, not without wounds, but without surrender. And that makes you a living testimony. You don't just wear a title, you carry evidence. You've seen too much now to doubt God. You've walked through too much now to break easily. The pressure didn't crush you, it clarified you. The warfare didn't stop you, it sharpened you. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. That's the posture you're stepping into now. You've fought long enough to know your enemy. You've lasted long enough to know your God. And you've endured long enough to know that this calling isn't about comfort, it's about conquest. Not carnal conquest, but spiritual takeover. You're not a victim of warfare. You're a vessel of victory. And because you didn't quit, heaven can now trust you with more, with authority, with territory, with influence, not for applause, but for impact. You've been refined by fire, and now you burn with purpose. The battle wasn't just about your struggle, it was about your sound. Because when you open your mouth now, you don't just speak, you shift things. When you walk into a room now, you don't just enter, you occupy. That's what the battle forged in you. Weight, grit, depth, discernment. And now, with every step, you carry breakthrough, not just for yourself, but for everyone connected to your obedience. A crown was being prepared in secret. While you were waiting, heaven was working. While you were being broken, heaven was building. And while you felt forgotten, a crown designed, measured, and refined by God's own hand was being crafted for your head. You didn't see it, but every trial added to its beauty, every tear shaped its design, every act of obedience, every quiet surrender, every no you whispered to temptation, it all became part of what you will soon wear in the spirit. Because crowns aren't given to the casual, they're forged in fire. Your crown isn't ornamental, it's symbolic. It represents authority, endurance, and spiritual maturity. It isn't for display, it's for assignment. God doesn't place crowns on heads that can't carry the weight of them. He waits until the character has caught up with the calling. And that's what he was doing in your hidden season. He wasn't just delaying your breakthrough. He was maturing your soul, strengthening your shoulders, establishing your voice, breaking cycles from your lineage, cleansing the residue of old patterns. All of it was preparation for what's about to rest on you. You will wear a crown, but not because you asked for it, because you were proven ready for it. It is written in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 12, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, That person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Fine. This is what has been happening behind the scenes. You weren't just enduring, you were being elevated. Not in public platforms, but in spiritual rank. While others chased stages, you were developing stamina. While others posted success, you stayed bowed in silence, and heaven watched, measured, and said, "Yes, that one's ready." Because heaven doesn't crown the loud, it crowns the loyal, and loyalty is proven in the dark. You had every reason to walk away, but you didn't. You had moments when doubt flooded your soul, but you held your position. You endured disappointment without turning bitter. You surrendered plans without demanding answers, and every time you did, something invisible was shifting. The angels saw it. Hell felt it. And now, you're stepping into the fulfillment of what was promised when no one else was watching. Chosen one. This isn't a fairy tale reward. This is spiritual promotion. This is the oil of endurance becoming authority. This is the secret preparation making way for public demonstration. You're about to walk into rooms where you carry weight, not just words. Where you influence atmospheres, not just opinions. Where you speak. And things move not because of charisma, but because of consecration. This is what crowns are for. Not for pride, not for power, but for purpose. You're not being lifted so you can be seen. You're being lifted so others can see him through you. That's why you were hidden for so long. That's why the crown didn't come quickly. God was making sure you wouldn't wear it for yourself. And now that he knows your heart is his, he places it on your head without fear. You're entering a season of spiritual visibility, but this time, you won't crave attention. You'll carry assignment. This time, you won't chase recognition. You'll walk in quiet revelation. This time, you won't beg to be included. You'll lead where you once followed. Because when you wear the crown heaven crafted, you don't need to announce it. The oil speaks. The weight speaks. The Spirit of God upon you speaks. And people will recognize what you carry, not because you pointed to it, but because it can't be hidden anymore. It was never about being impressive. It was about being imparted to. Heaven is trusting you now with more. More responsibility, more clarity, more reach, more revelation, but most of all, more presence. And presence changes everything. You'll know who to speak to. You'll know when to stay silent. You'll know which doors are God's and which ones are distractions. Because you've been crowned with more than authority, you've been crowned with discernment. It's yours now. You passed the test. You endured the weight. You submitted in the silence. And now, the oil has found your head. If this word spoke to something deep in your spirit, if you know heaven has been preparing something in secret, comment this number now, 888. Let it be your prophetic agreement, a number that marks your shift, not just into blessing, but into being trusted, not just into elevation, but into alignment with heaven's purpose. Because crowns aren't bought, they're bestowed, and yours is ready. Doors are about to open, not the kind you can force, not the kind you chase. These are doors that only God can open, doors sealed by divine timing, unlocked by divine authority, and assigned to you by name. You won't need to compete for them. You won't need to prove yourself to enter them. You won't need to convince anyone you're worthy to walk through, because they were always yours. These doors have been hidden until now, not to keep you out, but to keep them holy. Because what waits on the other side isn't ordinary. It's not random favor. It's fulfillment of prayers, of process, of promises whispered long ago in the dark. You had to wait, not because the door wasn't ready, but because you weren't. Not fully. Not yet. Heaven has been aligning everything around you and within you so that when this door opens, you won't just enter, you'll occupy. And what you're stepping into now isn't temporary. It's not borrowed space. This is legacy territory. You're not walking in to visit, you're walking in to build. But before that, there had to be pruning. There had to be a shedding of false hopes, broken expectations, misaligned desires. God had to clear the clutter so that when the door swung open, you'd recognize it, not be distracted, not be double-minded, not be deceived. You had to learn to distinguish between a door and your door, and now you do. That's why the delay was necessary. That's why so many doors slammed in your face. Not because you lacked value, but because heaven was reserving you. You weren't being rejected. You were being refined. And now the shift is happening. You feel it in your spirit, like something is tilting, aligning. Doors that had no business staying shut are starting to creak open, quietly, supernaturally. You're about to walk into what others tried to block, into what hell tried to bury, into what time seemed to steal. Because nothing that belongs to you in the spirit can be stolen in the natural. And no amount of delay can cancel what heaven has sealed. These doors are not based on effort. They are accessed by obedience. You obeyed when it was hard. You obeyed when it was confusing. You obeyed when you didn't even know if it was working. And now, the reward is not just the door, it's who you've become on this side of it. Stronger, wiser, quieter, sharper, more selective, more grounded. Not looking for opportunity, waiting on instruction. God is about to prove that your obedience was not in vain, that the waiting was never wasted, that your name didn't get lost in the shuffle, that your promise is still alive and on schedule. It is written in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. And when the door opens, it won't be one of those situations where you wonder if it's God. No, this one will carry the unmistakable fingerprint of heaven. It will fit the shape of your calling. It will match the language of your prayers. It will feel like home because your spirit has been there before, in vision. You've seen it already in glimpses, in dreams, in declarations. But now, the manifestation is near, closer than it's ever been. You're not about to chase it. It's about to find you. And when it does, don't shrink. Don't doubt your readiness. Don't question your worth. God doesn't open doors for those who feel ready. He opens them for those who have been made ready. You were made ready in fire, in silence, in hidden places, through obedience, through grief, through pruning. And now, the door will open, not because of who you're connected to, but because of who you've become. This door will reveal that what looked like delay was divine design, that the silence was a strategy, that the pressure had a purpose, and that God is still the one who opens doors no man can shut. So walk through it with boldness, not arrogance, not hesitation, just confidence, a sacred knowing, because you didn't steal this, you didn't fake this, You didn't manipulate this. You endured for this. And now, what's been waiting for you is about to open wide. Not because of force, because of favor. Not because of striving, because of surrender. And when it opens, everything will make sense. Everything will fall into place. And your only response will be worship, because you'll know it was God all along. This was always the plan. Even the parts you didn't understand. Even the pain that seemed pointless. Even the detours that felt like divine silence. It wasn't chaos, it was choreography. A sequence written by sovereign hands. Carefully, intentionally, lovingly. Every page of your story has purpose inked into it. The problem is, when you're living through it, it rarely feels like a plan. It feels like confusion, delay, missed opportunities, broken expectations. But God doesn't write stories that make sense from the middle. His glory is often hidden in the tension between the promise and the fulfillment. And you've lived in that tension for months, maybe even years. You've wrestled with what he said and what you saw. You questioned the gap. You mourned the slowness. You doubted your worth when nothing seemed to move. But here's what you didn't see. Heaven never stopped working. You didn't miss it. What felt like falling behind was actually being held in place for alignment, for protection, for right timing. Nothing was wasted. Not even the silence. Not even the heartbreak. God is not a careless author. He wastes no ink. And your life has been written with intention, not improvisation. It is written in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things, not just the good days, not just the public wins, but the hidden battles, the private losses, the seasons where you couldn't see the point. God was working in it all, because your life isn't a random sequence of events. It's a divine assignment unfolding in perfect time. Even the things you begged him to change were serving a greater purpose. You didn't get overlooked. You got protected. You didn't lose time. You gained preparation. You weren't rejected. You were rerouted. The tears you cried became the river that softened your heart. The waiting built the endurance you now walk in. The pain taught you compassion you didn't know you needed. The closed doors preserved the purity of your mission. Nothing was wasted. Not one detail. The sleepless nights, the lonely prayers, the spiritual confusion. God saw it all. And more than that, he used it. That betrayal, it exposed what needed to be removed. That silence, it developed your spiritual hearing. That delay, it crushed the pride that would have destroyed your purpose. The pain broke you, but the breaking shaped you. And now, looking back, the pieces begin to make sense. Not all of them, but enough for you to whisper, maybe this was the plan after all. God didn't need your perfection, he needed your surrender. And you gave him that, even when it hurt. You said yes when it didn't make sense. You stayed when others walked away. You humbled yourself under his hand. And now, he's revealing what he was building beneath the surface. This isn't about getting everything you wanted. It's about becoming everything he intended. You weren't created to live by feelings, but by faith. You weren't assigned to comfort. You were called to carry glory. And that glory doesn't rest on shallow ground. It needs depth. And depth takes time, trials, resistance, breaking. healing, repetition. All of it served the plan. There is no wasted chapter. Even the ones you wish you could delete, even the ones you've tried to hide, even the ones you still don't understand. God is so sovereign that He doesn't just use the best parts of your story, He weaves the worst into something redemptive. Because what the enemy meant for evil, heaven rewrote for glory. And now, you carry wisdom that can't be taught, oil that can't be bought, authority that can't be borrowed, because it came through the crushing, through the silence, through the moments you almost gave up, but didn't. This is why God had to take you the long way. He wasn't just answering your prayers, He was transforming you into the kind of person who could carry the answer without being destroyed by it. That's the plan. And though it hurt, it was holy. Though it confused you, it never confused Him. Every shift, every step, every detour, every divine delay, it was part of the blueprint. So now, you walk with more than experience. You walk with confidence, not because you figured it all out, but because you finally believe this was always the plan. Others rushed, you waited, and now the difference is about to show, because while they were sprinting ahead, you were being anchored. While they were promoting themselves, you were pruning yourself. While they were chasing stages, you were chasing His face. And the fruit is not the same. Some built fast, but their foundations were shallow. They gained exposure, but not endurance. They attracted attention, but not authority. And now, cracks are beginning to show in what was built without process. Because what you rush, you risk. And what you build without God, you'll carry without grace. But you waited. You said yes to process. You said yes to correction. You said yes to the hidden place when every part of you wanted visibility. And now, the weight you carry is different. The depth you walk in is undeniable, because you didn't cheat the process to get to the promise. You didn't just wait, you obeyed while waiting. And that's what set you apart. You didn't wait passively, hoping God would just show up. You waited with intention. You worshipped through silence. You served while hurting. You grew while others coasted. And now, what's on your life cannot be fabricated. It's not hype. It's heaven's evidence. Because obedience in obscurity always produces authority in visibility. That's why what's coming next won't feel like a promotion. It will feel like a recognition of what's been growing in the dark, a reflection of what was already planted and proven in private. This isn't sudden favor, it's slow-cooked purpose now being seen. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 42, verse 31. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. This is the moment where obedience meets acceleration, but not the kind of acceleration the world recognizes. Not fast fame, not cheap breakthrough. This is holy momentum. Kingdom elevation, the kind that comes after faithfulness, after humility, after the secret tears, the early mornings, the nights of silence where you chose to believe anyway. You waited, and it's about to be worth it, because God is not unjust. He doesn't forget obedience. He doesn't overlook consistency. While others treated ministry like marketing, you treated it like stewardship. And heaven noticed, you may not have numbers, but you carry weight. You may not have fame, but you carry fire. And fire attracts heaven. The reward for waiting isn't just what's coming to you. It's what God has been building in you. You're walking into the manifestation with the maturity to carry it. You're stepping into the room, not needing the room. That's power. That's freedom. That's alignment. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to apologize for what you're stepping into. You don't have to explain the favor. You don't have to water down the oil. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable with the crown God is placing on your head, because they had the same choice, wait or rush. And you chose wisely. So now, let the evidence speak. Let your fruit do the talking. Let your peace announce your preparation. Because nothing is louder than the presence of someone who obeyed when it was hard. Chosen one, this is your time to rise, not in arrogance, but in alignment, not to prove anything, but to carry everything God trusted you with. There is an entire territory waiting for what you've been carrying. And now the signal has come. Release it. Release the words. Release the prayers. Release the wisdom. Release the sound that's been forged in the waiting room of heaven. And as you do, don't keep this to yourself. Like this word, if it confirmed what you've been quietly sensing, share this message with someone else who chose obedience when others chose ease. Comment below, I choose obedience. Let the heavens and the earth witness it again, that you're still saying yes, that you're still standing on the promise, that you're still choosing to walk, not run, because you know who you're following. And if you haven't already, subscribe to stay connected to this movement. This isn't just a message, it's a mantle. And the ones who are rising right now are the ones who chose the long road of faithfulness over the shortcut of performance. You are one of them. And soon, those who rushed will wonder how you arrived where they tried to go without process. They'll look for the method, the formula, the system. But what they won't understand is there was no method. It was obedience. You waited. You surrendered. You trusted when it didn't make sense. And now, the gates are opening. You're not coming to announce yourself. You're coming to carry glory. You're not here to impress. You're here to release. So, walk boldly. Chosen one. Walk slowly if you must. But walk deeply. Because every step you take now is backed by heaven. You didn't miss your moment. You matured into it. The anointing came through delay. It wasn't handed to you overnight. It wasn't something you stumbled into by accident. It was forged slowly, silently, and sometimes painfully. And it wasn't for show. It was never about appearance. It was always about alignment. You didn't know it at the time. But every day you waited. Heaven was adding weight to what you carry. Not physical weight, spiritual weight. The kind that cannot be taught or transferred. The kind that only comes from experience with God in the place of delay. Because anointing doesn't rest on talent. It rests on the surrendered, and surrender doesn't happen in a hurry. It happens in seasons of stillness. In years where you wonder if God has forgotten you. In moments where your only answer is yes. Even though you don't understand what you're saying yes to, the delay was God's hand on your life. Saying, not yet, because there's more I want to pour into you before you pour out to others. Then, he saw that you would steward his presence well. So, he led you into the wilderness. Not to destroy you, but to develop you. The wilderness doesn't shrink the anointing, it seals it. It teaches you to hunger for God more than outcomes. It breaks you free from addiction to applause. It delivers you from the need to be seen. And that's where your oil was formed. In the lonely places, in the silence between prayers and answers, in the nights you said, "God, if you don't come through, I have nothing." Those were the crushing places. But the crushing is what releases the oil. And now you carry something others can't fake. You walk into rooms and atmospheres shift, not because of who you are, but because of what's been deposited in you through obedience. The delay didn't just stretch your patience, it deepened your well. You learned to draw from God when nothing external supported you. You learned to lead yourself in worship when no one else was leading you. You discovered how to cultivate presence without music, applause, or lights. And that kind of depth, that kind of intimacy, creates an anointing that makes the enemy nervous. You don't speak from theory anymore. You speak from trenches. You minister from scars. You intercede from the ache of having walked through it yourself. And that's why your words now carry resonance. People may not know your backstory, but when you speak, their spirit knows this person has been with God. It wasn't the delay that made you powerful. It was what you did with the delay. It is written in the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Chosen one. The anointing isn't light. It's weighty. And you now know why God took his time with you. Because what you carry will confront demons. It will break generational chains. It will tear through deception and heal wounds you didn't create. But he couldn't trust just anyone with that. He trusted you. And that trust came at a cost. The longer you waited, the deeper your roots grew. You lost some things. You lost people. You lost opportunities. But you gained something holy in exchange. You gained God's presence in a way that can't be faked or imitated. And now, you're not desperate for platforms. You're desperate for presence. That's the sign of the anointing. When you no longer need to perform, when you no longer crave affirmation, when your hunger is to hear his whisper more than the world's applause. It's taken time. More time than you expected. But now, the oil is ready. And here's what you must understand. The world will notice the results, but they'll never understand the cost. And that's okay, because this wasn't for them. This was between you and God. This was the inner covenant, the agreement forged in quietness. Heaven remembers the vows you made when no one else was watching. God hasn't forgotten the altar you built in the wilderness. And now, he's about to pour through you in ways that eyes haven't seen and ears haven't heard. Not because you're the most qualified, but because you were willing to be the most consecrated. That's what the delay accomplished. Not just preparation, but purification. You're not the same person who first asked for the promise. You've been shaped, trimmed, pressed, and tested. And now, you carry something dangerous to darkness and precious to heaven. The kind that only comes from being held back until heaven said, "Now, the wait is over now, walk in it." This is the moment everything has been leading toward. Every delay, every crushing, every silence, every hidden act of obedience. Heaven wasn't stalling. Heaven was staging. God wasn't holding you back. He was holding you in place until everything was ready, including you. And now the signal has shifted. There is no more striving, no more searching for signs, no more pleading for permission. The command is clear. Step forward, not with fear, not with hesitation, but with the confidence of someone who has been through the fire and come out marked. You are not stepping into something random. You're stepping into fulfillment. This isn't hype. This isn't an emotional moment. This is the release of a promise that has been tested in the wilderness, proven in the quiet, and sealed with oil. This is heaven saying, now is the time. Oh, it's not just the time to see, it's the time to move. Because what God placed in you is not just revelation, it's responsibility. The weight you carry is not ornamental, it's operational. You've been trusted not just to feel His presence, but to release it. Not just to carry a word, but to walk it out. Not just to stand firm, but to take ground. This is why the wait was so long. Because God wasn't preparing a platform, He was preparing you. He was building in you the strength to carry what others would collapse under. He was deepening your roots, so the glory wouldn't crush you. He was teaching your spirit how to hear, how to discern, how to endure so that what begins now won't burn out later. And now the wait has done its work. You no longer need external confirmation. Your spirit is already testifying. You feel the shift not just in your circumstances, but in your spirit man. You've turned the corner, not because everything is perfect, but because everything is aligned. You are ready now, not because you've reached perfection, but because you've reached surrender. That's the finish line of waiting. When you no longer crave control, when you stop questioning the plan and start trusting the one who wrote it. When you understand that the goal was never the promise, it was always the process of becoming. You've become stripped of illusions, emptied of pride, anchored in truth, steady in obedience. And that version of you is the one that heaven has been waiting for. It is written in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Now, where you go next will carry weight, not because of where it is, but because of who's going. You are not moving as the same person who started this journey. You are moving as one who has been tested, refined, and found faithful. So walk. Walk into rooms you used to feel unworthy to enter. Walk into assignments that once overwhelmed you. Walk into roles you didn't think you could handle. Walk into the promise as someone who knows it was never about the spotlight, but about the surrender it required to stand in it. The anointing is not coming, it's here. The authority is not developing, it's activated. The favor is not future, it's present. And not because you chased it, but because you trusted. That trust has become your currency. Heaven responds to it. People will feel it. Atmospheres will shift around it. Because it's not charisma, it's covenant. It's not gifting, it's grounded obedience. There's no need to announce what God is doing. Your steps will speak for themselves. Your movement will carry the sound of someone who knows, not because they read it, but because they lived it. You've lived it. You've cried for it. You've waited for it. You've warred for it. And now, you walk in it. So don't look back. Don't try to explain it to everyone. Don't shrink to make others comfortable. This moment was written before you were born. This was always the path, even when it felt like chaos. It was always leading here. The season of waiting is over. The wilderness has served its purpose, and the door is already open. Walk, chosen one, not as the rejected, not as the delayed, not as the forgotten. Walk as the trusted, Walk as the refined one. Walk as the one who passed the test. You made it. Not just through this message, but through a journey that few truly understand. A path marked by testing, hiddenness, surrender, and deep obedience. And yet, here you are, still standing, still chosen, still carrying something holy. Heaven has not overlooked you. This entire journey wasn't about information, it was about impartation, a divine moment where the Spirit of God met you in the exact place you needed Him most. And if something inside you was stirred, if something deep in your spirit felt seen, called, and confirmed, it's not by accident. It's because you are part of a remnant, a set-apart people, God's chosen ones. And now, it's time to take this word and carry it into your world. But before you go, like this message, if it put language to your process, share it with someone else who's been walking in silence, wondering if God still sees them. Comment below. Still chosen. Let that be your declaration. Loud, clear, prophetic. And if this resonated with you, if you want to keep receiving words that stir your calling and confirm your assignment, subscribe to stay connected. Not to a channel, but to a movement, a tribe of the trusted, a gathering of those who chose obedience over comfort and holiness over hype. This is not the end. This is the activation point. You're not just walking away with encouragement, you're walking away with evidence. Evidence that God was speaking, evidence that you were never forgotten, evidence that your delay was a test, and you passed. So stand tall, walk boldly, and never forget, you were never just waiting. You were becoming